and welcome to Itihasdhir, a platform which is dedicated for preserving and upholding the wisdom of our history. I am its founder Aditi Joshi, and today I have with me Mr. Chandrachur Ghose.
Namaskar.
Now, Mr. Chandrachur needs no introduction. He is a noted author, a researcher, and a historian, and he's written extensively on history, politics, as well as all the national movements. And his works dig deep into the newly classified archives to question not only the hidden aspects of the freedom struggle, but also the role of the enigmatic Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. And so you've also been involved and closely associated with Mission Netaji, which has actually helped in the declassification of these archives. So this biography boasts the untold story of an inconvenient nationalist, challenges every notion of the Gandhi Nehruvian narrative, and it brings to the forefront, the life story as well as um, the challenges which Netaji caused to not only the empire but also the establishment, and thereby became an inconvenient nationalist. So welcome to Itihasdhir, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
So I want to start with the subtitle. The subtitle calls him an inconvenient nationalist. So who was he inconvenient for? Like the empire, the Congress, or the post-independence governments?
Actually, he was inconvenient to everybody. And that is something, that is one aspect which has been overlooked since the very beginning of history writing in independent India. It was overlooked primarily because everybody, every group, every political ideology wanted to appropriate him. So the Congress, although the Congress, he was expelled from the Congress, virtually expelled from Congress, the Congress wanted to appropriate him, trying to show him that he is our man. He was always a congressman, he was the president of Congress twice and all. So he was painted as a congressman. But since he was, Netaji was very vociferously leftist in his ideology, leftist economically. I must clarify that because people often misunderstand. His economic ideology, economic thoughts were very much leftist. So the left group, the communist parties, the forward bloc, which claimed that it was formed by Netaji. Netaji did form forward bloc, but that forward bloc and the forward bloc of independent India were two very different entities. We'll come to that later on. So the left group, they claimed, they wanted to appropriate him, that he was our man because he revolted against the Gandhian Congress and he was leftist, so he's our man. So everybody wanted to appropriate him, and the right wing, the BJP and all, they joined the game later, but even they tried to appropriate him, showing him as a nationalist. So, they couldn't call him very directly a Hindu nationalist, but the prince of Indian nationalism. So he was so prominent in the concept of nationalism, it was not very difficult for the right wing to appropriate him, or at least try to. So everybody tried to appropriate him and paint him in that ideology, in their own ideology. So in that clash, what they suppressed or what got suppressed is that when Subhas Bose was in India, particularly towards the end of his political career in India, he became inconvenient to everybody. And all these political groups went against him because his idea was complete independence. He never compromised on that. So, although Gandhiji and the other leaders in the Congress argued for not for complete independence, although they said it, in words, in writing, they used to talk about it, Kampurn, Swaraj and all, but they were happy with dominion status. As long as dominion status we get it, we are okay. So that was the attitude. And then when the world war started, Gandhiji wanted to cooperate with the British because he couldn't stand. He sat in front of the viceroy, tears rolling down his cheeks. He couldn't stand the thought of the Westminster being demolished by Nazi bombing. So that was his attitude, and he very clearly said that India should not try to exploit Britain's moment of weakness or the difficult position that they were in. So Indian nationalists should not press Britain at that time for freedom, for independence. So let's negotiate, let's talk. So he went soft. But he was soft for many years. And Subhas Bose was, we need independence, we want independence, let's go get it. So he was ready for a clash. I mean, if you want independence, take it, because his thing was nobody is going to give you independence. The British are not going to just leave India and hand over power to you and you will be happy forever. It's not going to work like that. So you have to fight for it. So let's fight for it. Let's get it. Gandhiji did not agree with that. So they had wide divergence. And Pandit Nehru was, to a great extent, principally, in principle at least, ideologically at least, he was with Subhas Bose. But when it came to making decisions or siding with the leadership, he always chose Gandhiji. So, and when the Second World War started, Pandit Nehru also said that Britain stands for democracy and we must be on the side of democracy, because the other side is fascist, Nazi and dictatorial, authoritarian, we cannot trust them and all. So overnight, democracy became the deciding factor. India's independence took the backseat. So Subhash Chandra Bose found it completely unacceptable. He tried to create a mass upheaval, mass movement and all. He clashed with the Gandhian Congress. As a result, he was barred from holding any elected position in the Congress, which means that he couldn't even be an elected member of a local committee. Which basically for a person like Subhash Chandra Bose means he is expelled, he is thrown out of Congress, because he can't be in any committee. So the Congress took revenge by throwing him out, and that resolution which expelled him from Congress was personally drafted by Gandhiji. Many people do not know that. So he personally drafted that resolution. Now, and around that time, Subhas Bose was looking for alliances. So obviously, there were many interest groups, many ideological groups. So he was touring throughout the country. He was, going from north to south to west. He was restless, completely restless. He was going from one place to another, looking for alliances, trying to get different leaders, thought leaders, political leaders onto a common broader platform to create an anti-British resistance movement. So that way he was talking to Jinnah, he was talking to Ambedkar, he was talking to Savarkar, he was talking to everybody. And he had no ideological, this touch me not kind of attitude. For him at that moment, what mattered was India's independence. Ideology was a thing which could be settled later on. So he was talking to everyone. So at that time something happened. There was an election to the Calcutta Municipal Corporation, and he wanted to ally with the next most powerful political organization. So first he went into an alliance with Hindu Mahasabha, and the alliance did not work out. Their seat sharing did not work out. They had differences. Alliance broke before the elections. So then he allied with the Muslim League. So Muslim League and Subhas Bose's Congress, Bengal Provincial Congress Committee and the Forward Bloc, they allied and they got a majority of the seats. They formed they came to power in Calcutta Corporation. So that angered the Hindu Mahasabha. So Hindu Mahasabha started painting him as an anti-Hindu kind of leader who did not care for the interests of the Hindu. And the leftists by that time had already gone against him because he was not towing their international line. The communists in India have always towed the line which was set by Moscow. So they were following the Moscow line. Subhas Bose was not ready to follow the Moscow line because Moscow line did not mean anything to him. And he had denounced that idea of being influenced by a foreign country very early in his political career. He was, dripping in sarcasm, scathing sarcasm. He had written in 1926 in a letter that if I wanted to be a leftist or a communist, I would have gone into that camp and I would be a globetrotting communist firebrand going from one conference to another conference, living a happy life. Why would I undertake so much suffering? So he had denounced that, but obviously being a person who thought only of India's interest, he never hesitated to ally with them. And there were a lot of common grounds also on the economic side, on the social side also, there were a lot of common grounds. So he tried to build a broad coalition. But that coalition broke down because the communists found him very difficult to handle. So Congress finds him very difficult to handle, Hindu Mahasabha finds him very difficult to handle, the Communist Party finds him very difficult to handle. Only Muslim League was still the ally. Now, we did not know the full story of Muslim League and Bose's alliance. Later on, when I was writing this book, it came to my attention that the governor of Bengal was keeping a very sharp eye on the alliance, and he was sending regular reports to the viceroy that what is going on here. So he reported to the viceroy that the Muslim League is very happy to get Bose in their camp. They think that they have got Bose in their camp, and that they have got Bose under their control, and they can exploit his image to build their influence. But they are going to be in for a shock because they have no idea what Bose is. Within a very short time, they are going to find that they, instead of having Bose under their control, they are under Bose's control. So they have no idea. So that is the governor of Bengal writing to the viceroy. So we can understand what actually the nature of the alliance was. So all these things were, when he was doing all this and taking a very radical stance against British imperialism, there was a time when he became a little intolerant of criticism. And criticism from the press particularly, who were denouncing him continuously only because he was opposing Gandhiji. So he lost patience there was a brief window of time when he lost complete patience that, I mean, I am trying to do something on my own, I am trying to build a mass campaign, and just because I don't agree with Gandhi, you are showing me down, you are trying to pull me down. So obviously he did not do much, but his colleagues, his associates, his followers, they started bringing down meetings. I mean, they stoned the meetings, and one of the meetings they stoned was of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. So they threw stones, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee got hurt. But that is only one story which is highlighted everywhere by the leftist historians and academicians. So I have shown in the book that his guys were attacking meetings of all parties. So Congress meetings were being attacked, communist meetings were, M.N. Roy, Manavendranath Roy's meeting was attacked, he was assaulted. The Congress state president at that time, the Gandhian committee's president, he was manhandled. So all these things were happening. But that happened for a very brief period of time. But then obviously he got things under control and saw to it that it didn't continue. So the press went against him, the Bengal's press went against him. So 1940, when the war has started, it is already 7-8 months after the war has started, and Subhas Bose is now desperate to hit at the root of the British Raj. So he has against him the Congress, Hindu Mahasabha, Muslim League, Communist, and the press. And he starts a movement to remove a monument, the Hollowell Monument, from Kolkata. Hollowell Monument was created to commemorate an incident which was exaggerated to show that Sirajuddaulah, the last Nawab of Bengal, he had put hundreds of Britishers in one small room and they had died of suffocation. So that was a false story, exaggerated false story. So Subhas Bose made that a symbol. He made the Hollowell Monument a symbol of the British Raj, and he said that we will have to remove that. So he started a campaign, announced it in May, and in June, when the campaign was picking up, the government panicked, and he was, thank you. So he was thrown in jail in 1940. So that was the end of his political career in India. But in June, July 1940, he was standing alone with his followers, which was huge, which was throughout the country, and particularly the revolutionary organizations. Each and every revolutionary organization at that point of time stood behind him, and they were ready to do whatever he asked them to do, and throughout the country, not only in Bengal. So he was traveling to Madras Presidency, which now is Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, all these states, Kerala, all these states. He was traveling frequently to Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, which was then central provinces. Most frequently, he was touring the United Provinces, which is now the Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. And he was traveling throughout cities. It's unimaginable how much he traveled, how much he covered in that brief period of 1 year from after the war started. And he had that massive following which unnerved the Congress and the government. So the only way to deal with him was to throw him into jail, and that was the thing. I mean, that is the only way to make him keep quiet. But the idea of calling him the inconvenient nationalist is that at that time, that critical time, when he was perhaps the only one person who could have thrown an organized challenge to the British Raj, everybody was against him. Even the Congress Socialist Party, which was led at that time by Jayaprakash Narayan and Ram Manohar Lohia. So he had Jayaprakash Narayan went against him, criticized him for opposing Gandhian line and everything. That happened in 1940, March. But very soon Jayaprakash Narayan realized that he was wrong and Subhas Bose was right. So he wrote a secret letter, with a letter which came out much later. It was published much later. And there he said that he admitted that I was wrong, my assessment of you was wrong, and you were right in assessing the international situation and the domestic political situation. And let us work together. Let's work according to the plan that you have in mind, and let's go ahead. But it was too late. He was already in jail, and he was on the verge of leaving the country. So that was too late. But Jayaprakash Narayan and the Congress Socialist Party played a stellar role during the Quit India movement. We'll come to that later. But at this point, Subhas Bose was allowed. That is the reason to highlight that position. It is not known to many people. So that is why I called him the inconvenient nationalist.
So, throughout my reading of Netaji, most we're usually told about his dramatic escapes, and everything else is left in a blur. You know, like there are references made to whether he went to Japan or he went to Russia, and then it's all just left in a blur. And his activities are again often not talked about, or they're talked about that okay, he, like, you know him, okay, he was in the INA, he formed the INA.
Yes.
That is all that is there. So how did this come about? How did you get into this, that you want to figure out these fragments of his life which have not been told, and how did you start picking up those pieces?
See,
Where did that journey
it's
start?
an interesting thing. Actually, it was not planned that way. When we formed Mission Netaji in 2006, we were focusing only on the death mystery. Because all of us thought that we have read so many books, we know everything about him. Kya janna hai aur? So while going through the files, as we started getting files declassified from the Indian government, from the foreign archives, so Mission Netaji has got secret files declassified not only from the Indian government, but we have got files declassified from the US, from the UK, from Taiwan, from Australia, from Germany. So we have got files declassified. Just a handful of guys who hold no position, has no backing. Through our efforts, we got them declassified. So while reading through these files, we realized, at least I felt that way, that it is not only his disappearance that is a mystery. Much of his life is a mystery, which is not properly, the story is not properly told.
Came into the freedom struggle, but how did he come into it? What led him to grow up to be this?
Right.
What was his childhood like that? Like when I was reading, I still remember when I had read that first chapter, and I was like, okay, like we were not taught any of this. Did not know any of this.
So, no, those things are not taught, and those are not even properly explained. When I realized that there are so many gaps in the storytelling about his life, I started reading the biographies, the standard biographies, the famous biographies, more carefully. And I found that they were written in a CV format. Subhas Bose was born, he went to school here, went to school there, went to college here, was rusticated, then he went to England, he joined the ICS and quit. He succeeded in the ICS and quit. He came back and joined the freedom movement. Then he became president of Congress. Then he left, formed INA, and then he disappeared. So every biography was written in the CV format. There was practically no attempt by anybody, and there are very good biographies which tells stories, unknown stories, bits and pieces and everything, but there was no coherent attempt to understand the man, to understand the motives, to why he was like that, and what were his driving forces in his mind. So that was a big gap that Subhas Bose, who nobody has seen since 1945, the government has tried its best to suppress everything about him, yet he inspires millions of young people today, 80 years later. How is that even possible? Why? What is there in that man that he can inspire so many generations after so many decades? So I started digging sideways, like while we were focusing on the disappearance mystery and all, I started digging here and started reading the files and news. So first thing I realized was there was so much uncollected information. There are newspapers throughout the world. So, for example, when the Second World War was going and Subhas Bose had left India, he was in Germany and he was in Japan, all news related to him was blacked out in India. So, in India, no newspaper would write about him. But then when I was doing the newspaper archive search, I found that he got huge coverage in American newspapers. Even, I mean, not the big names, not the New York Times and the Washington Posts or the Chicago Tribune. The small newspapers, they were writing about him, reporting what he was doing. So, understand the importance of this. I mean, he was considered that important, which we are never given to understand or realize that what was the stature of that man. Another indicator is that if you go into the archives in our country, in foreign archives, and just search by name the information that they hold on different leaders, there are many leaders there were many leaders, tall leaders in the freedom struggle. But if you take a metric, number of files held in the name of different people, you will find that most archives hold the maximum number of files in the name of Subhas Chandra Bose. So he meant something. Otherwise, why would they keep and preserve so many files? Why would they maintain so many files? So all these things started coming together, and I realized that there is a much bigger story than what we know, and that has to be told. So that's the reason why we called it the Untold Story, to bring out all this and to bring out, highlight the aspects which were never discussed, analyzed, to put him to the extent possible. To the extent possible for me as an individual, I write from the place of curiosity, because I can question, I can research, and accordingly I can put together information. I might not be a trained historian, but I'm glad that I am not, because trained historians have many skills. They learn about frameworks, theoretical frameworks and all. But I found that they are also limited by the framework. So the kind of intellectual rigor and honesty that is required many times when you are writing books on history, that you have to step out of those frameworks, you have to think beyond the frameworks, you have to think outside the box and look at things differently. That I found is quite absent in most of the famous academic historians. With all due respect, I am not discrediting him for whatever they have achieved. Whatever they have achieved, it is their credit. But when you want to bring out something which in flesh and blood, you are writing about a man. You cannot be mechanical. You are not writing a CV, as I said. That you have to bring out the man's spirit, make the reader feel like he is looking at that person in flesh and blood. If you cannot do that, then it's a futile exercise. So that's how I came into this writing this book and from deviating from the death mystery. But once that was completed and we were done and we had reached a conclusion on that side, then only I came here. So we published Conundrum in 2019 and this book will be published in 2022. So those 3 years, I've been researching for 20 years, but then I took those years to put my thought to it and structure it mentally and all, and then get it committed to paper.
So, Netaji visiting, Europe or studying in England, did it affect how he looked at India's freedom struggle, or was that all in his, in his upbringing only that he was this passionate about it?
See, he was, as an individual from the very childhood, was a rebel. He did not fit anywhere. He was a misfit in the larger scheme of things, everywhere. So his father was a Rai Bahadur. His father was a corporator, a chairperson of Cuttack Municipal Corporation, was a member of the Legislative Assembly and government pleader. So a very high stature, something like Motilal Nehru. I mean, he did not, Subhas Bose's father did not join politics, so he did not go there, but something like Motilal Nehru, comparable. So, Motilal Nehru, if you see, Jawaharlal Nehru followed in his footsteps. He mixed with the family culture and he took to the family heritage and followed in his footsteps. Subhas Bose was different. From the very childhood, he branched out. He never got into the family, the culture, as so to speak. He was a man, a person of his own. From like 7, 8 years old, it became very clear that he is not going to. So he used to do things which nobody liked, and he was the youngest child. I think he was the 11th or 12th out of the 14 children that his parents had, and he felt very insignificant, neglected, because all the elder brothers and sisters, they hogged the limelight and they had all the space and everything. And his father was too busy to pay attention to him. Mother was busy handling the household, but he was still closer, emotionally closer to the mother, to his mother. And there was one caregiver, a lady, and she used to love him a lot. So he was emotionally close to her also. So from the childhood, we see that he has a very close connect with mother figures. And so what he does is, once he goes, he was in the English medium school first. His education was in English medium school. Then he went to a Bengali medium school, and there he got in touch. He came into contact with the headmaster, Beni Madhav Das, who kind of inspired him so much, instilled the spirit of independence, thinking freely and everything. So, but he got very little time. That man was also transferred very quickly. But they kept in touch, and through him he understood the Indian culture. He learned about nature, being one with nature. Then he discovered Swami Vivekananda's works, and then got lost into it. There he started picking up that spirituality is not only about doing meditation or thinking about God. It means to go out and serve other people, particularly the downtrodden, those who are suffering. So he formed a group of friends. This is when he is like 12, 13 years old. So they would go to places where people, those times medical facilities were not that kind of advanced. And when there used to be epidemics, people used to get scared to even visit those places. But these guys would just go and serve those people when nobody else would dare to go to different villages, teach the younger guys, the younger fellows who would not have the facility to go to schools and everything. So he got involved in that kind of stuff. And then, but all along, he was excellent in his studies. He was always a class topper, always, without fail. So he came to Kolkata, saw the larger world, understood it was a new world. So in Presidency College, he became the leader of the students, in the sense that he ran the debating society, he ran the college magazine, and various other extracurricular activities he used to take leading part. But then once, when it happened that one European professor abused the students, Indian students, and the students got very upset. There were a lot of controversy and all. So at one point of time, the students decided that they will give it back to the professor. So he was assaulted, and there was huge hue and cry, and the commission was set up within the college. They ran an inquiry and all. Subhas himself did not hit the professor, but he was there, and he was the leader of the students. So all the blame came onto him. He knew who had done what, but that's the character of a leader, that he did not name anybody, he did not snitch. He took the blame and he was rusticated. And so then another year in wilderness, he went back to Cuttack, did social service and all those things, came back a year later, and with the help of Sir Asutosh Mukherjee, father of Samaprasad Mukherjee, he got admission in Scottish Church College. In Scottish Church College also, he did excellent in his studies, was a topper. Then he joined the University Armed Forces Corps, got military training there. And then he wanted to go abroad to study on the subject of education, because that was the line he wanted to take as a profession. He wanted to teach. So he wanted to go abroad. So his father put the condition that if you want to go abroad, if you want to go to UK, abroad at that time meant England. So if you want to go to England, you will have to sit for the civil service. So he put the condition. So he accepted the condition and went. When he went there, he had just 6 months, 6 months or 8 months. Usually students who used to go to England for civil services, they used to sit there for years. Apart from the course that they took, they used to study separately for the civil services. Something like what we see in JNU and all, but it was infinite times more difficult. Because the number of people who used to be taken in were like 30, 40, sometimes 25. So very limited number of seats, and both Indians and Britishers would be taken in the service. So extremely tough, and 6 or 8 months was nothing. So he prepared for the ICS in those months. He took his course at that time, and in Cambridge, and he ranked 4th. And he ranked 4th. That was also because of an error that he committed while taking the exam. So there was a Sanskrit paper where he had to translate a Sanskrit passage to English, or maybe English into Sanskrit. So which he did in the rough copy. But before he could copy it into the answer sheet, fair answer sheet, the time was over. So he missed out a large chunk of numbers. So probably if he could have finished that, he would have stood 3rd or 2nd. We don't know. We will never know. But nonetheless, 4th was an astounding, amazing rank in that short period. And then joining the ICS was never on his agenda. He never wanted to. So it was not a very difficult decision for him. For him, the problem was how would he convince his parents? Because that was the only condition which they had put to let him come to England. So he consulted with his elder brother, Sir Chandra Bose. He wrote letters to the leader in Bengal, the leader of Bengal Congress in Bengal, Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das. And then finally, once he convinced his elder brother and all, and everybody saw that there is no point in opposing him, he will do anyway whatever he wants to do. So he resigned and came back. He didn't even have the money to come back, so he borrowed the money for the steamer, for the ship by which he came back. And he came back and went to meet Gandhi. The ship docked in Bombay, and so Gandhi was in Bombay at that time. So he went to meet Gandhi at that time, and Gandhiji was sitting in his usual dress, in the usual environment. But he went in the 3-piece suit and just fresh from the ship from England. And it was very awkward. He felt very awkward that, I shouldn't have come like this and all. So Gandhiji was his father's age almost. So put him at ease.
So now that we've talked about how disillusioned, Netaji was with Gandhi, how much did the Congress's internal politics actually break his spirit? Like, did it break his spirit, or did he just have a disdain for it? Okay, this is something I don't think we can work, like, not even in a symbiotic aspect.
No, it did not actually. There are two reasons for it why it didn't. There were groups inside the Congress. If you look at Congress from the national perspective, as a national organization, there were different groups. And even in Bengal, there were two groups. One was pro Gandhi, one was pro Deshbandhu. And they did not see eye to eye. They always used to fight against each other. And they were backed by the revolutionary groups. So, for example, there were two big revolutionary groups. One was the Anushilan Samiti, another was the Jugantar. So sometimes Jugantar would back Subhas Bose and Anushilan would back the other person, which later on after Deshbandhu's death became Jatindra Mohan Sen Gupta. Uh, so, and then after that in 1940 the thing changed. Anushilan came supporting Subhas Bose and Jugantar went against Subhas Bose. So the equations, dynamics used to keep changing. But the thing is that from the very beginning, Subhas Bose grasped that this is weakening the movement. So he tried to bring together both the factions, and he focused not only on the Congress traditional politics or the Congress organization per se. He put his energies into building the youth movement and the student movement. So when he came back, he was appointed as the principal of the National College. So for national education, Deshbandhu and the Congress leaders had set up the National College. But when Gandhiji called for non-cooperation, civil disobedience and all those things, students used to, they stopped coming and there was little attendance. So after that, he was trying to build up the momentum and get students and keep it going.
How old was he during all this time?
That was only a part-time thing that he would do, and but he took it very seriously. So Deshbandhu had a second rank of leadership, just like Mahatma Gandhi. So Gandhiji and Deshbandhu were extremely good managers, and if you look at them from the current management perspective, they build a second rank of leadership, which means, in modern terms, what you would call succession planning. They did excellent succession planning. So Gandhiji had his own rung of leaders, second rung of leaders, who would stand behind him, be his core team, and when he would not be there, one from them would come up and take charge. So he built a team. Equally, Deshbandhu built a team in Bengal, and so these people were engaged in this national college. The joke about Subhas Bose at that time used to be that he took his job so seriously that even if there was no student, he would, as a principal, he would just go and sit in the classroom and sit there for half an hour or 40 minutes, whatever the duration of the class was. So if anybody came asking for him that where is Subhas, so one of his colleagues would say that he is teaching the empty class. So that was the level of dedication and this thing. But obviously that was part-time thing. His main thing was acting as secretary to Chittaranjan Das. So he was learning the ropes. He obviously did not flex his muscles just because he came from a very aristocratic, well-to-do family, influential family, or because he had quit the ICS. First, succeeding in ICS is a big thing. Quitting it for the national movement added to his glamour and aura. He was, the way media works, he was obviously put on in a pedestal, the contemporary press. That, such a young fellow. He came back to India in 1921 when he was just 24. So such a young fellow has done such a big thing, huge thing, and it would be easy for anybody to get swayed by the praise and by the media exposure that you are getting. But he avoided all that very studiously and just stuck to his work in the National College and helping Deshbandhu. And the politics in Bengal was taking a churn at that time. It was there was a big debate about going back to revolutionary stream. Because what had happened is in 1920, Gandhiji had promised to the country that if you follow my path, I will get you freedom in 1 year. So, freedom in 1 year became such a catchphrase that everybody joined it. Bengal revolutionaries refused. So, Gandhiji had to come to Bengal and had a massive debate with the revolutionaries, young revolutionaries. And once, I mean, whoever is seeing your podcast today, I would tell them to go back and read the debates, the discussions, free and frank, I mean, no holds barred kind of debate with the revolutionaries and Gandhiji, where Gandhiji is trying to convince them that you follow my path. If I don't succeed, after 1 year, you do what you have to do, but give me 1 year, but committed, dedicated 1 year. So they decided, the revolutionaries decided that for 1 year they will not do any uh, act of what was called terrorism during those days. So no dacoity, no bombing, no killing, nothing. So they would follow the peaceful, non-violent method of Gandhiji.
Whatever he
Yes.
assigned.
But then at the end of 1921, there was nothing in sight. I mean, what happened is the Prince of Wales came for a visit to India, and that gave the Congress the opportunity to raise the issue, to I mean, kind of pump up the issue, hype up the issue. So they said that we will protest the Prince's visit in every city where he goes, and Congress was a well-knit organization by then. And that credit goes to Gandhiji, the way he organized Congress till the district level. So he said, the Congress said that we will protest and hold protest marches and everything, we will make it clear to the Prince that we are not happy with the British government, with the British rule, and we want reforms. So the negotiations started. A lot of things happened, but the negotiations failed. Most of the Congress leaders were in jail, they were put in jail. Gandhiji was outside throughout the period, he was not in jail. So he was kind of coordinating the entire movement and all. But then he called off the movement because of one single violent incident in Chauri Chaura. That was in 1922. He called off the entire movement, and the thing collapsed.
Everyone says that had he not called it back because people were so incited already, it would have happened.
The movement was building up. There was a momentum. People were charged up. They were seeing that there is a big possibility. People like Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das and Motilal Nehru, they had formed the Swarajya Party by then. And not by then, I'm sorry. They formed it later on. But the movement was picking up. So when Gandhiji withdrew the civil disobedience movement, that was a big blow to everybody. And it was not appreciated. Although most of the leaders were in jail at that time still, they opposed the move. They said, why are you doing this for one stray incident? Surprisingly, the same Gandhiji, when the Mopla rebellion happened, his reaction was completely different. He wanted to show it in a very different light as something odd incident, stray incident. And so he didn't pay attention to that. He didn't call off his movement because of that. Or later, even much later, when the disastrous, barbarous incidents were happening on Direct Action Day in Kolkata and then in Noakhali, his reaction was very different. He was not, his reaction was not same as was towards the Chauri Chaura incident. So I still don't understand why he had to, I mean, what was the necessity, what was the moral necessity or the strategic necessity of calling off the movement, which was still building up. But the movement collapsed anyway, and as soon as the movement collapsed, Gandhiji was arrested and put in jail. So then there was a lull in the Congress activity, and when things were not going according to plan or things were not happening, these people in Bengal, the revolutionaries who had joined Gandhiji's movement, they went back to their organization. And then again their normal activities started. So that created another debate that whether the militant nationalism, their militancy should be curbed or should the so that debate was there. And then Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das started advocating the entry into the councils, because that was part of the boycott program, that nobody will go for elections in any of the municipal corporations or the state assembly, legislative assemblies and all. So Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das and Motilal Nehru argued that we need to enter the legislative assemblies, because what has happened if we stay outside the assembly is that the British government is getting a free hand. They are just legislating, they are passing laws, and there is no opposition. There is no opposition. So if we are trying to break down the British Raj, let the Congress break it down from outside, let the Swarajya Party break it down from inside. Now, the governors in every province and the viceroy at the center, they had veto power. It was not as if the Swarajya Party, even if they won, they could stop any legislation. They did not have the power to stop the legislation. But what they could do is to defeat a bill on the floor of the assembly or the central assembly, which is parliament. Now, if that keeps happening repeatedly, the message that will go out to the whole world is that the British Raj has no mandate. So they are ruling by veto. They don't have popular support. And every law that they want to pass, they are getting defeated. And that is exactly what happened. The Swarajya Party in Bengal, in central provinces, in Maharashtra, in Tamil Nadu, they got so strong, even in the central assembly. It became so strong that they were able to defeat bill after bill. And that caused an acute embarrassment to the government. And the government then started turning towards negotiation and compromise. That let's think of taking the reforms, constitutional reforms forward. Let's think about, so that's what actually led to the Simon Commission, which came in 1928. But by that time, Deshbandhu had died. Deshbandhu died in 1925. So when this challenge was building up, the British government retaliated. Retaliated how? They saw Chittaranjan Das as the main person of danger, because he had around him the constitutional congressmen and he had around him the revolutionaries. Both used to stand by him and support him. So he could garner mass movement and oppose the British Raj. So he had to be broken down. So what they did is they left Chittaranjan outside the prison. And Chittaranjan Das had won the Kolkata Municipal Corporation elections, and he became the first Indian mayor of the corporation. And the Swarajya Party also won the provincial assembly elections. So Subhas Bose was appointed the chief executive officer, the youngest chief executive officer in the country for a municipal corporation. And as soon as he took charge, he started work on reforming the municipal corporation, doing things for the city which nobody had imagined was possible. And in the meantime, the revolutionary groups started increasing the pressure. They started increasing the number of what they used to call action. So number of incidences went up and all those things. So in one sweep in October 1924, the Bengal government picked up practically everybody who mattered and who stood behind Deshbandhu, and they sent them to jail. Some were sent to Andamans, most of them were sent to Burma. Subhas Bose himself was sent to Burma, Mandala jail, and they were not told under what charges, what were the charges against them. Subhas Bose was not told what were the charges against him. He was just picked up and sent there, and there was no communication as to when he would be released or whether he would be released at all or not. Even that was not clear, because there was no charge sheet framed, there was no trial, no judge even heard his case. So it was complete black box. He was just shipped out. There he stayed for 3 years without knowing what his future was going to be, whether he was going to live or die. And then he contracted tuberculosis and was almost on the verge of dying. But then there also he started a movement and got the acknowledgement and acceptance by the British. That was the first time. And I keep saying this, that those who criticize Subhas Bose on the ground of being indifferent to Hindu causes, There he started the movement for Hindu prisoners for the right of doing the pujas. So Saraswati Puja, Durga Puja. So they went on hunger strike. They told one should read his correspondence with the British government, with the jailers at that time, that where he is arguing that we are not secular. I mean, secularism has killed your European civilization. Religion for us is a matter of life breath. It is not a utsav. It's not a festival for us. It is a matter of daily living. So we need these facilities, and if you are giving these facilities to criminals who are Christians,
Why are they not giving
but that's such highly qualified prisoners sitting who are Hindu. Just because they are Hindu, you are not giving the facility, you're not paying for their for the costs. So the huge movement started. They started fasting. The government suppressed the news as usual, but because of their resourcefulness, the news was leaked somehow. It reached Kolkata. It was splashed all over the newspapers, and there were questions in Central Assembly and all. So finally, the British government had to relent. They actually had to pay for the Saraswati Puja and the Durga Pujas, and that that tradition, Subhas Bose continued. So wherever he would be in jail during the puja time, he would, create a ruckus that you have to pay for the puja. Jail mein puja hoga, and you will have to pay for it.
So when Subhash Chandra Bose, now as we've talked, he was so key Hindus will celebrate their festivals regardless of whether they're in jail, because the whole secular idea doesn't work. And if Christian criminals are allowed, so why aren't the Hindus allowed? But then in the mix of all of this, when he is called a leftist nationalist, does that not oversimplify his role? Because if someone just hears the title leftist nationalist, you would think, okay, this is a capitalistic free.
Precisely. See, that is the narrative that has been built as far as Netaji is concerned, to portray him as a leftist, secular leader. Leftist, secular are terms. The fact that these are debatable terms, these have nuances, and they are not cast on stone, that part has been ignored. So leftist means he has been portrayed as if he is a current leftist leader, like our current leftist leaders, who run down anything about nationalism, who would run down anything that has to do with the Hindu past of the country, and basically anything that has to do with the legacy, the traditions. That's the way leftism has come to stand.
So was his vision anywhere closer to the socialist authority?
Economically. So what you have to understand is that at that time, anybody who is interested in studying Subhash Chandra Bose, I tell them to study about 3-4 speeches. His articles should be read, definitely. His 2 books must be read. But 2 or 3 speeches are there where he actually gives his vision about future of India, how he sees India after independence. So he says the reconstruction of India. But when you start reading those speeches, you realize that standing in 1930s, 40s, he is looking 50 years ahead. He's not talking about the next 10 years or 5 years. He is talking 50 years ahead. So, for example, when he is talking, when he is delivering his address as the President of Congress, as the Rashtrapati in Haripura in 1938, the speech that he delivered had elements, had components of the modern India, which we are still debating today. So he is talking about India's foreign policy, which must be India first. A slogan that was picked up so many decades later when Modi ji was running his campaign for Prime Ministership in 2014. He is talking about national security. National security, the armed forces and subsidiary organizations was a taboo in the Gandhian scheme of things. You didn't talk about having security agencies and armed forces. People in Congress, in the Gandhian Congress, didn't talk in those terms. They were happy with charkha and they were happy with prohibition of alcohol consumption and all those things. They were happy with those. But then he started talking about industrialization, how India needed heavy industries and heavy investment in industrialization so that it can ramp up its GDP, because India had been kind of sucked up so badly economically. They were dried up because of the drain of wealth, because the colonial government, that was what they were doing. They were not sitting here for charity. They were generating money which they were sending to the home government. So everything that they were earning here, they were being spent in England for the development of England, not for the development of India. India's development was minimal so that it could sustain the infrastructure which kind of held the economy together, which could generate the profits for the empire. So Subhash Bose gave the vision for the next 50 years as to how heavy industrialization should move, and health infrastructure should be improved. He was talking about improving agricultural productivity. So agricultural productivity, crop productivity is something that we are still arguing, we are still debating. He is talking about indebtedness of farmers, how the farmers had become indebted, and that is stopping the growth of agriculture. He was talking in 1938. This particular issue has been discussed by successive planning commissions in our country, and now even the Niti Aayog is still discussing it. One of the main planks on which Modi ji fought election was doubling the farmers' income, if you remember. So this man was talking in 1938 about all these issues. He was talking about, trade, about forming international relations, what India first meant, how India should interact with the developed countries. So all these visions. Then he started the planning committee, which later on Nehru converted into planning commission. So he started a convention, a tradition where he used to bring the industries ministers of every province to sit together and discuss how India should be industrialized. So he put together people like who were not in politics, Prashant Chandra, Maulana Bish, Visheshwaraya. So these kind of people, the technocrats, he used to get them together with the politicians and chalk out a plan how India is going to progress, how India should think about its armed forces and develop its defense plan and everything. So here is a man who's looking at India's overall growth. But at the core, this was needed. Why? I lost the thread. Why he called himself a leftist? Because leftism at that time meant state control. The economy had to be controlled by the state. Now India had been subjugated for so many centuries. People were impoverished to an extent. It was unimaginable. You cannot have a free market economy in that situation. There was no road infrastructure, there was no health infrastructure, there was no education infrastructure. India had nothing. To make that possible, the state had to take control of everything, and distribution of wealth had to be overseen by the state. That, in that sense, and in that limited sense, he was a leftist. On the other hand, culturally, he was a nationalist. Nationalism has been turned into a very bad word now. The nationalists are narrow-minded people. They only think of themselves as good people and look at the outside world as kind of inferior.
A very self-centered notion.
Yes. So others are inferior in quality. They have hatred for the others. They don't know what love is and all. So that is all bunkum. Subhash Chandra Bose defined India's nationalism as early as 1928 in a speech of Youth Congress which he gave in Pune. And there he said Indian nationalism is defined by Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. Whatever is the best in human quality, whatever is the most pleasant aesthetic in human nature, and whatever is the truth, the ultimate reality, the truth. Indian nationalism is defined by these three qualities. Indian nationalism is not defined in comparison to others. We are driven, our nationalism is driven by aspiring for a higher goal, not against what Germans or Britishers are like, what we should be in comparison to them. It's not defined like that. It's a goal that defines our nationalism. He was a man who was telling his writing from jail in 1927, 1926 to his bhabi, to his sister-in-law, that please make sure that the children in the family are taught Mahabharat and Ramayana in original. Because the older I grow, I realize that everything that is the most beautiful and true in Indian culture, they are contained in Ramayana and Mahabharata. Show me one leftist leader who will have the courage to say this. Whenever he used to always travel with a small pocket-sized Gita in his pocket, and he used to carry his mala, jap mala. Which leftist leader goes around with a Gita and the jap mala? So the confusing the cultural side and the economic side, he has been, I mean, like so many other aspects, he has been kind of portrayed in a very, very distorted manner.
Even his global networking, like, with Japan or with USSR or Germany, it's portrayed in a very, what do you say? Sometimes it's shaded upon, and then there are also, like, references, certain references which are made, let's say, when it comes to Germany, they're made in a very specific light, and it's not seen that the global networking had different agendas, or it was leading to other things. So how do you view that, or how do you defend that?
See, again, the political interest plays in here. It was the Congress government which has been in power since independence, and it's left of center and left. These two ideologies, or more or less, you can put them together, club them together. There are different shades, but those are nuances which can be ignored, But they have written our histories, textbook histories. They have set the narrative, and I really admire Shashi Tharoor for actually putting this out in public domain for the first time, and not hesitating. Without any hesitation, he spoke the truth, which no other Congress leader had spoken before him. In one of the conclaves, where he said that the effort of the Congress government from the very beginning was to paper over differences between, fault lines between groups, communities, and interests. So there was a conscious attempt towards history writing that would make everything seem very homogeneous, very peace loving, and no differences at all, no fault lines. Culturally, we are absolutely okay, united, and it's a nice mix with words like syncretism thrown in. So it's a rosy picture painted, and that we achieved our independence through the non-violent methods of Gandhiji. So this was actually reconstructed history with a goal in mind. It is not history as it happened, it was history as the rulers wanted, as what they wanted to show to the world, as they wanted to portray. So here also we see the same thing, is that when Subhas Bose goes to Germany, the first thing that any common person who has read any biography of Netaji, he will find it very difficult to spot this fact that he did not even want to go to Germany. His first desired destination was the Soviet Union. He wanted to go to Soviet Union. He had absolutely no plan of going to Germany. So when he left India in 1941 January. Now distortions happened both from the left and from the right. So from the distortion, I will tell you what. So from the right wing, there is a consistent narrative being pushed that Subhas Bose got his idea of going abroad and raising armies from Veer Savarkar. So Subhas Bose met Veer Savarkar in 1940 May. And that's when apparently he got the idea that he should go out and raise armies outside, raise government outside with the help of foreign powers. Now the thing is, in 1940, Indian forces were still fighting. There was no substantial number of prisoners of war which could be converted into an army. The war had just started. It was not even 1 year, and I mean, the deployment was still going on. Savarkar and Subhas Bose might have discussed the possibilities. It is possible that they discussed, but as I have shown in the book, that Subhas Bose was in his one of his characteristics was forward planning. Not only he used to plan much ahead of doing something, he used to have always 2 or 3 alternatives. So plan A is there, B is there, C is there. If A doesn't work, he will fall back on B. B doesn't work, he has plan C to fall back on. So he was very meticulous in that sense, and he never left anything to chance. Never happened in Subhas Bose's life by chance. And he said it in as many words that I hate surprises. I don't like surprises. I need to be prepared. I like to be prepared. So he was always prepared. So he left India in 1941 January. He had started preparation from 1939 November. And he had started talking to the closest of his associates. He sent out teams for recce. One team went through Afghanistan on the Soviet border. One person he sent to Japan. There were other persons who tried to find out about the Chinese coast, whether that was a better route, or going through Japan was a better route, or going through Afghanistan was a better route. So teams had already started working. Plans were afoot. He had prepared his network. So when the British government threw him in jail in 1940 July, the plan was complete and ready. He had the blueprint ready. It needed to be executed. So how could he execute from within the jail? What he started is, one of his things was that in whichever jail, wherever he was, he used to split his cell into 2 parts. So he would put bed sheet or curtains and make a small puja corner. And nobody had right to entry there. And he would do his sadhana. Subhas Bose was not a normal, like dabbling in spirituality or dabbling in religion and interpreting religion kind of guy. So that is a very big difference with his approach to religion and spirituality from that of Gandhiji or any other contemporary national leader. He was a sadhak. So he actually not only studied the Shastra, he was doing sadhana, and that included Tantra. He started his Tantra sadhana and studies in Tantric studies, in Tantra sadhana, from 1924, when he was sent to Mandalay. He didn't know whether he was going to come out of the jail alive or not. But even then, that's the characteristic of a leader. He started preparing himself spiritually, politically. He read voraciously. He used to get books brought from India, from Kolkata, from Delhi, from wherever. In fact, his reading books became such an issue in jail, whenever he was in jail, that at one point of time the British government had to say no. We will not get don't ask for these books, these are dangerous books. So they would refuse. And this became a question in the Central Assembly, in the Parliament, that why have these books been refused to Subhas Bose? So that was his habit, that he would read voraciously, absorb, write notes. Whatever he's reading, absorbing, he would write detailed notes. So he kept a diary when he was in Mandalay from 1924 to 27. The name of the diary was Pebbles on the Seashore. Stray Thoughts. And there we find that he is making an argument that since all other religions are proselytizing by nature, why shouldn't Hinduism be? Because Hinduism has lost ground by following the principle that you can only be a born Hindu. You cannot be converted into a Hindu. He said this has to change. And we should send out teams to different countries. For example, in Africa, he said we must send out a team of uh, uh, priests and practitioners to Africa where they will convert them into Hindus. Which leftist leader talks today about converting other religions into Hindus? They would rather die. So, the amount of the scope of his thought, the scope of his planning, the details that he had an eye for, they put him leagues apart from his contemporaries, miles apart from his contemporaries. He was in a different league altogether. So, I mean, to bracket him as a secular, of course, he was secular. Secular in what sense? As a staunch practicing Hindu, he, just like a good Hindu, he welcomed every other religion, every other uh, people, people from every other religion. Everybody was his, I mean, brother, sister, as an Indian. So he gave, I mean, shape to the concept of being an Indian when others who flaunted words like secularism, 6, not 45, in 46, when the riots started, nobody had, no national leader had any idea how to contain the riots, how to deal with the riots, how do you bridge the gap between Hindus and Muslims. There was only one man who had done it, executed it and shown it. So even with all their distrust and dislike for Subhas Bose, the Congress leaders had to constantly put him up as an example that Netaji has done this. He showed it in Azad Hind Fauj, in Azad Hind Sarkar, wherever he went, he brought together Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jains. They never talked about their religious identities. He could do it in his own surroundings, and nobody bothered about the religious identity. Today we hear so much about this halal certification thing, as if it is sacrosanct and it has to be there and all. In the INA and in the Azad Hind government, they had common kitchen. So Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, they ate from the common kitchen. Till the time Netaji arrived in Southeast Asia, there used to be fights. The jhatka or halal, what kind of meat should be distributed and what should be cooked. Once he arrived and put the common kitchen, nobody ever asked. Halal was not an issue, jhatka was never an issue. So, by the sheer force of his personality, by the force of his ideals, he could bring together millions around him, which the Indian leaders here, who were so eager to get power handed over to them, they failed miserably, and that's why the partition happened. I mean, this simplification of blaming Jinnah, Jinnah agreed for an undivided, united India. It was only, that is, I'm talking about 1946 when the cabinet mission had come and presented its plan. After that, Jinnah in 1946 till June, he was ready to accept a united India plan. It was only when Nehru put out his views that Jinnah called for direct action. He said, I am ready to accept the British, cabinet mission plan of undivided India as long as I get certain autonomies for certain provinces and their organization. But it is Nehru who is not giving me that assurance. So I am compelled to go back to my plan for Pakistan then. That's when the whole thing started and India had to be divided. So it's very easy to blame one person and without giving the background. But then Subhas Bose was a different. There would be no question of partition. So, for example, Mujibur Rahman, who later became the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, President of Bangladesh, and he was a Muslim League leader in Bengal. So, when he wrote his autobiography, he expressed the feelings of the Muslim Leaguers, the Muslim League leaders, that how they saw Netaji. When the World War was going on and Netaji used to speak from Southeast Asia, they used to hear, all of them used to hear his speeches. And they wanted him to come back. So the dilemma for the Muslim League leaders at that time was they wanted Subhas Bose to come back to India and take charge. But they were also worried that if Subhas Bose came back, there would be no Pakistan. So they were caught in that dilemma. Then should we have him back or not? Because if he comes back, India will reach a height which nobody else can take her to. But if he comes back at the same time, there will be no Pakistan. So what should we do? That was a big dilemma.
Acha, did Netaji overplay the role of Japan, or was it a calculated gamble that he took in with context to India?
No, actually, those were alliances, nothing more than alliances. Even when he went to Germany, people want to portray him as a Nazi fascist sympathizer.
They say that he met with Hitler, so
Of course,
he
he
was.
met with everybody.
Yeah, but then it's put out like there's that one image which is put out that what he supported the genocide and he was very anti-Semitic, and so those sentiments are like put
for
out.
those people, my counter question is, Indira Gandhi was friendly with both Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. Should we treat her in the same bracket? We don't. It is the American government which planted the jihadis. The whole problem started with them planting the jihadis in Afghanistan. So Osama bin Laden was a US recruit. Then the Americans should also be considered in the same bracket. Subhas Bose never contributed to the Nazi or fascist ideology.
He just met with the.
He met with Hitler because Hitler was giving him all the facilities. One has to understand this, that Subhas Bose had nothing to give to Hitler. Okay, Hitler was not getting anything from him other than some publicity. Materially, he was not in a position to give him anything. Hitler could have just ignored him. That ये बंदा क्या देगा? कि इसके पास कुछ है ही नहीं. अकेले आया है खाली हाथ. But then when Subhas Bose arrives, uses his network, which he had built in 1933, 34, 35, 36, when he was exiled in Europe, he mobilizes the entire network, gets people together, sets up a government in exile, and then starts recruiting the army. So everybody can see that this man can do something which is unimaginable for us. So Hitler was ruling the world at that time. हिंदुस्तान का कोई और लीडर का नाम कोई बता दे उस टाइम का, who would have dared to go and even knock on his door. हिटलर की छोड़ दे, कोई जर्मनी एम्बेसी में जाके कोई खटखटा के कोई get past the security guard. They didn't have that status. And here this man is going all out. He wants to go to Soviet Union. But because Soviet Union has got negative feedback from the Indian Communist Party, they turn around. They say no.
Which is ironic because he's
So-
painted as the leftist.
Yes. So, but inconvenient to the communist movement. The communists couldn't recruit him, and he was addressing the same constituency as the communists. So he became a competitor. Inconvenient. So they gave him negative report on Bose to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union refused him entry. At that time, standing in Afghanistan, in Kabul, in winter, nowhere to go, he made his way through the Italian embassy, to the Italian legation, meets the Italian High Commissioner, the ambassador there, Alberto Quaroni. Quaroni writes in his confidential note to the home government in Rome. He writes back to Mussolini. Subhas Bose was very well known to Mussolini. He was very fond of Mussolini. Mussolini was fond of him as individual leaders, not ideologically. So Quaroni writes in his confidential note that I wish we had got this man 1 year ago. Then we would have been certain about defeating the British by now. So he is sent off through Moscow to Berlin. He goes to Berlin. He doesn't go to Rome, he goes to Berlin. Berlin, he has got one shot at convincing the first man he meets there, who's a mid-level diplomatic officer. So he has got one shot. If he is able to convince him, then he will get past and meet the next high-level minister or whoever. Now this mid-level diplomatic officer, he doesn't know anything about Subhas Bose. He doesn't know much about Indian struggle. And language is a barrier. So Subhas Bose not only convinces him, that man turns forever to work with Subhas Bose, and his loyalty turns towards India's favor. So he becomes a supporter of the Indian freedom struggle. So then next person to meet is Ribbentrop, the foreign minister. Why should even Ribbentrop meet an Indian leader at that point of time? They are ruling the world. They are beating the hell out of the sense out of the British Empire everywhere. They are the winners at that time in 1941. So Subhas Bose talks to Ribbentrop, gives him a plan, shows him the bigger picture. Ribbentrop is so enamored by it that he opens the door. So the foreign ministry opens the door. The foreign ministry gives him funds, gives him diplomatic status as a head of a state, gives him money, gives him logistical support. From a single man without any help, he gets everything overnight. So a government, a foreign government, who is giving you all the facility, I mean, would you pontificate that, hey, listen, I am doing all this, you are nice people, you are helping me, but I don't like you, you are evil. I mean, what kind of mad person would ever talk like that? I mean, when after killing 3 million people or 3 million people in the Bengal famine, if Jawaharlal Nehru can bare his teeth and be all smiles and be a friend to Winston Churchill, Hitler never killed an Indian. He was killing Britishers. He was not killing Indians. If any Indian died, they were the British Indian soldiers. They were in the British Indian Army. People from the military establishment, they like quoting and arguing that, the Japanese tortured Indian soldiers, the Germans tortured Indian soldiers. My question is, what were the Indian soldiers doing in Egypt? What business did they have? What were the Japanese Indian soldiers doing in Singapore?
They were fighting on behalf.
किसके शादी में गए थे? You go to fight a war for another person, and by the rules of war, you are captured. They will do. You are prisoner of war. They will do what they have to do. So Subhas Bose never ideologically agreed with them, and this was known because the biggest helper of Subhas Bose in the German regime was the person who rebelled against Hitler. Okay. If you have seen that movie, with Tom Cruise as the hero,
I think it's which is deals with one of the failed attempts.
Yes. Well, where they attempted to kill Hitler.
Yes, I think I remember the name.
So those were the people who were supporting Subhas Bose. They knew that this man is not a Nazi, he is not a fascist. He is here solely for the purpose of India's freedom. And same in Japan. He was not one with the Japanese war ideology.
It was Valkyrie, I remember, because that would have bothered me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Valkyrie.
Okay.
So those are the people who were helping Subhas Bose in Berlin. Even when Subhas Bose left Germany and went away, his entire establishment was kept intact by the German government.
So it was more like a means to an end, because his goal was...
It is international diplomacy. You take the help of powers who have resources, who are ready to help you.
For your
liberation, for your freedom. Subhas Bose took money from Germany, took resources, help and everything. When he came to Japan and started raising money from the Indian diaspora, he used to send back money to repay the loans he had taken from Germany. Even during the wartime, and he promised to Japan that once India becomes free, we will repay the loan. So he was not taking anything for free. He was not a stooge. And the Britishers were constantly looking for information that would prove him to be a stooge of the Japanese. They called him a fifth, what do they call? Puppet army. So a Japanese puppet. They used to, but that was propaganda. They knew very well, because when we saw the declassified Australian documents, these were transcripts of telegrams which were being communicated between Japan and Germany about Subhas Bose, and they were so the German the British, the Allied powers had already broken the German and Japanese code, but they kept it a secret. So even when Netaji is making the journey, 90 days submarine journey from Germany to Japan, to Southeast Asia, the Allied powers knew. They knew that he was traveling, and they would have killed him, because there was a standing order which Churchill had issued, which makes Netaji the only Indian leader against whom there was a kill order. So if there were bigger and better leaders, there was never a kill order against anybody. There was kill order against only one person, that was Subhas Chandra Bose. So the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, they were instructed that wherever they intercepted him, it's kill him on the spot.
So Netaji was inconvenient for the empire, and it makes sense that the empire wanted to suppress him, and to some extent, as we've discussed, the Congress also. But he's also missing from, majority of his contributions are missing from our historiography. Like supplements are now coming in. You have supplemented the biography, but it's majorly still missing. Is it because he doesn't fit in those dimensions? Like, is it because he did not care for the so-called establishments? He had a goal and he just chased that, and that doesn't sit well with the governments coming in and out.
See, that is one thing, is that when India became free, when the transfer of power happened, a narrative was prepared and it was continued. That narrative kept on becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. That narrative was that the Britishers left of their goodwill. One morning, all of a sudden, it dawned upon them, epiphany kind of thing, that we are terrible people, we have been torturing India for 200 years, we must now leave. And they left. So they shook our hands, all those people who were sitting in Dharna and spinning the charka, they shook hands and they left. So it gives an honorable exit to the Britishers, who had sucked the blood of this country in every means, by every means, in every possible interpretation. And it saved the face of the Congress leaders who were intent at that time, since 1945, only on compromise and negotiation. They were not in the spirit of fight anymore. They didn't want to fight anymore. And this was admitted by Pandit Nehru, by Mahatma Gandhi, and they admitted it. Mahatma Gandhi admitted it when he saw that the partition had become unavoidable. That's when it dawned upon him that all the horses that he had backed, they had betrayed him. He was not for partition, he was not for division of the country. So he had backed the wrong horses, and that's when he realized that he had backed the wrong horses, and the horse that he should have backed, he had driven him outside the country. So Congress chose the path of compromise from after the war was over. Although the country as such was burning, it was a volcanic situation. Protests had erupted throughout the country, everywhere, massive violent protests, which the Congress could have garnered to actually compel the British to leave, but they chose to suppress the movement instead. So the impact of the INA trials, when people didn't know about INA and Netaji, what was going on, very few people did. So when they actually got to know about INA, the shock effect on their psyche was so big and so sudden that the whole country erupted. Starting from Kolkata to Lahore to Rawalpindi till the Gulf, where the Middle Eastern countries where Indian forces were posted, to South India, everywhere along the country, massive violent protests broke out against the trials, protesting against the trials. For the first time, the Royal Indian Air Force rebelled. They revolted. Unimaginable. As soon as that was put down, the Royal Indian Navy, which was the biggest rebellion, that started it. It shook the foundation of the empire. Who put down the Royal Indian Navy rebellion? It's not the British government. It was Pandit Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, under the instructions of Gandhiji, that this was becoming inconvenient. They didn't want it. That we are negotiating, we are ready to compromise, talks are going on, transfer of power will happen, power will come into our hands. This is disturbance, we don't want it now. They needed INA to win the elections of 1945 and 46. As soon as they won the elections, they forgot everything about INA. Everybody. So, as soon as the RIN mutiny was over, the postal department went on strike, the railways went on strike. There was a strike in the Jabalpur cantonment, which is the military establishment, protesting everywhere in all cities throughout the country. There were shooting, death, and rioting, everything was going on. The Congress could have harnessed this power, brought them together, and seen to it that there is no partition, because that was the only situation where the Muslim League was on the back foot, and the nationalist fervor that Hindustan, India as a united entity, that could have won. But Congress chose the path of negotiation, compromise. So, once that is done and transfer of power happens and comes to the hand of only these selected people who are the Gandhians, they have to defend themselves. They have to justify. To do that, they have to create a narrative. They have to erect a narrative, a bubble. And that bubble was, that narrative was that we won our freedom through Gandhian non-violent movement. Whereas the British actually fled out of fear because of the reaction to the INA trials. So it was Netaji's image, his activities, the impact of the INA, so everything around Subhas Bose. And that is exactly what Attlee, as the Prime Minister of England, when he came back to India in 1955 on a tour, he told everybody about that. He didn't hide it. He kept talking about it, even when he met other scholars, Indian scholars, who have written about it. So he has never hidden it. In his autobiography, he doesn't credit Gandhiji's movement, non-violent movement, for freedom. When it comes to stating the reasons, obviously as the Prime Minister of England who relinquished power, it was not a very palatable thing for the empire's pride. So obviously they will try to smoothen it out, but there also Attlee names only Subhas Bose. That such a movement broke out, such a protest broke out because of Subhas Bose's activity. So this had to be suppressed and the Gandhian myth had to be created. Because if Subhas Bose came back at that time, there was not a chance in hell that anybody else could have become the leader of the country.
So this is what I want to ask you, that if he would have come back, how different would things have been? Because I don't think any of the hegemony of any of the parties would have lasted in front of him.
So if he came back, see, we have to look at different time periods. There are several possibilities. It was not possible for him to come back in 1945. So that's why because 1945 India was still not free. He had to continue the struggle, and that is why he decided to leave the Southeast Asian War Theatre and find a new one where he could open a new front. That's why he started traveling towards the Soviet Union. But if he came back in 1947, then also things would have been very different, because 1947, first thing is, if he came back in 1946 or 47, in fact Gandhiji was publicly saying that Subhas Bose is dead and I am convinced, but secretly his secretary was writing letters to his biographer, Louis Fisher, one of the most respected journalists of his time, and the writer of his biography, based on which this Attenborough movie was made. So we find Gandhi's secretary writing to Louis Fisher that if Subhas, this is in June 1946, that if Subhas comes back at the head of a Russian army, Gandhiji will not be able to reason with either the Congress or with the country. So if Subhas Bose is dead in 1945 August, why is Gandhiji's secretary writing in 46 June? That if Subhas comes back with the head of a Russian army, that means Gandhiji had some information that Subhas Bose had gone towards Russia and that he is alive. बेकार की बात तो ऐसे थोड़ी ना लिखेंगे. So if he came back in 46, then that would have been the end of kind of the Mountbatten arrangement. Wavell had left, Mountbatten had come in. And Mountbatten, when he was given the charge of the operations in Southeast Asia, there was a verbal duel. Many people don't know about it. That Netaji attacked him very bitterly, calling him names, gave him epithets, and called him an amphibian monster. Because amphibian monster, for this reason, that Mountbatten apparently had become an expert in amphibian warfare.
Okay.
And he badly lost in one of the battles in Europe. And badly lost it. And his reputation was gone. And immediately after that, he was posted in charge, the Supreme Commander of the Southeast Asian Armed Forces. So Netaji, in one of his broadcasts, said that this is probably the only instance where, after losing so badly, a general gets a promotion. And if this is the example of his capability, then God save the empire. I mean, he's nothing but an amphibian monster. So that name stuck. Mountbatten, when he landed, when the Allied forces landed in Singapore, the first thing that they did, the first job, the first task was to demolish the INA memorial. Mountbatten was vindictive. He demolished, the first thing was to demolish the INA memorial, which Netaji had built. Under his instructions, it was built. Second thing, which was hidden to all Indians, as to why Mountbatten chose 15th August as India's Independence Day. It was Mountbatten's choice, not our leader's choice. So 15th August was chosen because it was on that day in 1945 that Japan surrendered. So Mountbatten wanted to commemorate that I have got Japan by their neck on 15th of August, I will get India by their neck on 15th of August. India did not become a republic on 15th of August 1947. It became a dominion. And Congress from 1929 onwards had junked the concept of dominion status, rejected the idea of dominion status in favor of Purna Swaraj, complete independence. So in 1947, Congress did a volte-face because it was required for power to be transferred to this selected group of people. Congress had always stood against joining the Commonwealth, which was the British Commonwealth of Nations. That's their full name, British Commonwealth of Nations. Congress was always against joining that. But now Pandit Nehru went and joined the Commonwealth without the approval of the Constituent Assembly. He came back and presented it as a fait accompli that this is done, now you have to ratify it, you have to approve it. So the Constituent Assembly had no choice. And Constituent Assembly, all elected members were Congress members. So it was not a very difficult thing, although a lot of people, a lot of leaders opposed it, they criticized it. But it was done. So a volte-face on complete independence in favor of dominion status, a volte-face on delinking with the British Empire in favor of joining the Commonwealth. And to paper it over, to make it sound pleasant, the word British was dropped. Just terminology. The British, from today, it is not no more British Commonwealth of Nations. It is only Commonwealth of Nations, as if that made a difference. So all these things were done, and if Subhas Bose came back after this, his brand of nationalism would have posed such a threat, such a challenge to what happened between 1945 and 47, that a lot of people wouldn't find a place to hide. And at that time, Netaji would have had the backing of the entire country, irrespective of political ideology. But the institutions, the Congress establishment and the government of India fully understood the implications. So it was important not only to hype the Gandhian mythology, but also parallelly to continue suppressing gradually Subhas Bose's contribution. So his role was never highlighted the way it was done for others. Although to his credit, other than Gandhiji, Pandit Nehru on his Red Fort speech in 1947 mentioned only Subhas Chandra Bose, other than Gandhiji. He did not mention anybody else's name. He said that he should have been here. But that is when the churn was happening, and Mountbatten, more the lady than the Lord, was playing the magic, and things were changing. And things changed, and Subhas Bose became a persona non grata, basically. So his contribution was suppressed, hidden. Narratives that were built were designed to distort his even personality, image, ideology, whatever. The impact was that government expected that people will forget him over a period of time.
They
But
underplayed his importance and his role,
and
the magnanimity that he had.
and with the expectation that he will be forgotten. But probably this is the only example in the whole world where, despite active government efforts, official efforts to make somebody gone, he has always come back stronger, because people have related with him. And with that kind of, if you and I realize that, the government must have realized that, and so he has always remained a threat to the establishment. That if he ever came back, if he didn't come back in 47, what if he came back in 1950? Even then he would be a challenge. What if he came back in 1955? Even then he would be a challenge. So the government was always worried that, what if he comes back? Subhas Bose, you asked something about his sense of disappointment at the very beginning, that whether he was disheartened. He wrote to Pandit Nehru a very nice line in a letter when this whole bitterness regarding about his re-election as the Congress president was going on. He said, I don't carry bitterness in my heart. I'm like, I have a boxer spirit. Let's have a good bout. We will have a knockout. But then after that is over, the game is over, we will stand up and shake hands, and I will not carry any bitterness in my heart. So I have a boxer spirit. Unfortunately, his opponents did not have that.
So this has been a very interesting conversation. I actually want to now talk, but that talk I'm going to save for another time. Talk about the declassification and all the efforts. So I look forward to having you here once again for that. But thank you so much, because I think you have done what, Nehru would probably be rolling in his grave seeing that this biography exists, and of course it's going to give nightmares to their ghosts. But this work has actually been more than eye-opening. This has been one of the best documented biographies on Netaji, and very comprehensive with that. And thank you so much for answering all the questions, and thank you so much for taking out the time and also explaining it for the viewers also.
It's my pleasure, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me in your show, and I hope your audience enjoys the conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to the viewers for watching this segment. Do like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more episodes. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.